You are not a good person. You are a person who has not yet been placed in the right situation. That is not an insult. It is not a judgment. It is the conclusion of 50 years of psychological research conducted on people exactly like you, people who were also certain it could never apply to them, and it destroyed that certainty every single time. You have a story about yourself. Most people do. In this story, you are fundamentally decent. You would not hurt someone who didn't deserve it. You would not follow orders into cruelty. You would not stand by while something monstrous happened. You know this because you feel it, because you have lived with yourself long enough to trust yourself, because the person you experience from the inside does not feel capable of what you read about in history books. This story is the most dangerous thing about you, because the people who committed every atrocity in recorded history had the same story, right up until they didn't. Philip Zimbardo spent his life pulling that story apart, not because he wanted to disturb people, because the evidence demanded it. Because again and again, in controlled conditions with screened and healthy and ordinary people, the same thing happened. The situation changed, and the person changed with it. Quietly, incrementally, without a single moment they could point to and say, "That is when I became someone else." There was no moment. That is the point. Ivan Frederick, all-American, coached kids, loved his family, deployed to Abu Ghraib. Within weeks, he was in the photographs, doing things that made the world recoil when it saw them. He didn't arrive there evil. He arrived there normal. The situation did the rest. You want to believe he was weak, that you were stronger, that there is something in you that would have held. Ask yourself honestly, what is that thing? Name it. Because Zimbardo spent decades looking for it, and what he found instead was this. The people who held were not stronger. They were not more virtuous. They were not built differently. They made a specific choice in a specific moment to keep their moral agency in their own hands instead of handing it to the situation. Most people hand it over. Most people have always handed it over. And most people never know they did it. Stanley Milgram put ordinary people in a room, told them they were participating in a study on learning, assigned them the role of teacher. In the next room, a learner would answer questions. Wrong answers would be punished with electric shocks. The dial started low. It went all the way to 450 volts. The label at the top said XXX. The learner screamed, begged for it to stop, went silent. 65% of participants went all the way to the top. Not sadists, not damaged people, not people who enjoyed it. People who were sweating, who were visibly distressed, who kept asking if they should stop, and who kept going. Because a man in a lab coat told them the experiment required it. Because authority, even thin and institutional and completely illegitimate authority, was enough to override everything they thought they were. 65%. That number does not get smaller because you find it uncomfortable. It does not have an exception built into it for people who consider themselves aware. It is the number, and it has replicated across cultures and decades and every variation researchers could design. You would like to be in the 35%. You probably believe you would be. So did the 65%. Zimbardo built a prison in the basement of Stanford University in 1971. 24 students, all of them psychologically healthy, all of them normal. Half became guards, half became prisoners. The guards got uniforms, the prisoners got numbers instead of names. 6 days. That is how long it took. 6 days before the guards were doing things nobody had told them to do, nobody had suggested, nobody had modeled for them. Things that came entirely from the logic of the role and the situation, and the slow disappearance of any internal voice asking whether this was right. One guard became so brutal, his peers gave him a nickname. These were college students. 6 days ago, they were in class. 6 days. Zimbardo himself lost perspective. He was so absorbed in his role as prison superintendent that he stopped seeing what he was watching until someone from outside looked in and told him it had to stop. That is how total the situational capture was. It got the researcher. Now, here is what produces it. Not weakness, not a broken personality, a specific set of ingredients that, combined in the right way, will work on almost anyone. The first is authority. The person, an institution, a system that grants permission, that absorbs responsibility, that frames what is happening as necessary, sanctioned, justified. The Milgram participants were not sadists. They were people who had outsourced their moral judgment to a man in a lab coat and told themselves that made it acceptable. The authority didn't force them. It just made them feel like the decision was no longer theirs. And that was enough. The second is anonymity. The uniform, the mask, the username, the mob. When you cannot be personally identified, when your specific face cannot be attached to your specific actions, something in the structure of conscience loosens. Zimbardo left identical abandoned cars in 2 neighborhoods. In the one where people knew their neighbors, it sat untouched for days. The only variable was whether anyone was watching, whether the person doing damage could be seen as a person. Think about what you've said online that you would never say out loud in a room. The third is dehumanization. This one has the longest history and the highest body count. You cannot inflict serious harm on someone you were still seeing clearly as a human being. The mechanism requires that you first reduce them to a category, a threat, a slur, a problem to be solved. Once that reduction is complete, the harm becomes not just possible but logical. Albert Bandura showed this directly. When a group was described to punishers in dehumanizing terms, the punishments were dramatically harsher than when the same group was described in humanizing terms. The behavior changed based entirely on the language used to frame the targets. The people didn't change, just the words. This is not ancient history. Look at what precedes every episode of mass violence in the modern world. Look at the language that runs for months or years before the violence begins. The reduction, the categorization, the slow withdrawal of full humanity from a group of people until harming them no longer feels like harming people. And look at your own language when you were angry, when you were afraid, when you were certain you were right and someone else is wrong. The fourth ingredient is the cover story, the euphemism that makes the monstrous legible as something else. Enhanced interrogation, collateral damage, necessary measures, ethnic cleansing. Every atrocity in modern history arrived wrapped in language designed to allow the people committing it to see themselves as doing what had to be done. The Milgram participants believed they were contributing to science. The Abu Ghraib guards believed they were gathering intelligence in a war. Jim Jones's followers believed they were building a better world. The cover story doesn't just fool others, it fools the person using it. It allows them to commit acts that would be unrecognizable to their former selves while experiencing themselves as reasonable, as necessary, as good. This is not historical history. It is happening right now, in every institutional structure you are part of, in every ideology you carry, in every language you use to make something uncomfortable sound inevitable. The question Zimbardo is asking is not whether you were a good person. The question is whether you were paying attention to the situation that is being constructed around you. Because you were always in a situation. You were always subject to authority. You always have the option of anonymity. You were always receiving language that frames other people in particular ways. You were always being offered cover stories that make certain actions feel justified. And most of the time, you were not watching any of it. You were just living, moving through your days with the comfortable assumption that your goodness is structural, that it will be there when it is needed, that you do not have to actively maintain it because it is simply who you are. Zimbardo's entire body of work is a long, meticulous, evidence-based argument that this assumption will get you. The people who resisted in the Milgram experiment were not heroes in the way the word usually means. They did not feel certain, they did not feel strong, they felt the same pressure everyone else felt. They just refused to let that pressure make the decision. In the moment when the situation was pulling their attention away from the screaming person in the next room and toward the authority in the lab coat and the frame of the experiment and the social pressure of compliance, they kept looking at the person. They didn't let the situation replace the human being with an abstraction. They kept seeing. That is the entire difference. Not character, not moral strength, not some innate quality that separates heroes from everyone else, just the refusal to stop seeing. Wesley Autry was on a subway platform in New York when a man fell onto the tracks in front of an incoming train. He jumped down, pressed the man into the trench between the rails, held him there as the train passed over both of them with inches to spare. When he was asked why he did it, he said he saw someone who needed help. That is it. He saw a person, completely, in that moment, and acted on what he saw before the situation could make the person into something more abstract, more manageable, more safely ignorable. This capacity is not rare. It is not reserved for exceptional people. It is available to you right now. In every moment where you are about to reduce someone to a category and you pause. Every moment where an authority is asking you to do something your conscience marks as wrong and you stop to ask why. Every moment where you notice the language being used around you and you ask what it is building toward. Those pauses are not small. They are the whole thing. You are not a good person. You are a person with the capacity for good and the capacity for evil, both fully operational, both responsive to situation, both available to whoever or whatever constructs the circumstances you find yourself in. The only question is who is doing the constructing. If you are not actively watching the situation, actively questioning the authority, actively resisting the dehumanization, actively refusing the cover story, then someone else is building the conditions of your behavior, and they are not building them with your best interests in mind. Zimbardo didn't write The Lucifer Effect to tell you that you are bad. He wrote it to tell you that you are not safe. That the line between the person you think you are and the person the situation can make you is not a wall. It is a slope, and it is always there, and it is always being tested. The only people who fall without knowing they're falling are the ones who were certain they never would. Stop being certain. Start watching. The situation is already being constructed. The only variable is whether you are conscious of it, or whether you find out what you are capable of the hard way. There is something nobody tells you about the Stanford Prison Experiment that matters more than the cruelty of the guards. It is what happened to the prisoners who stayed. By day 2, prisoners were having emotional breakdowns. One had to be released after 36 hours because he was screaming uncontrollably and couldn't stop. Others developed psychosomatic rashes. One began a hunger strike. They had internalized their roles so completely, so rapidly, that the prison felt real. The powerlessness felt real. The identity of prisoner, the number instead of the name, had replaced something. They were college students. They had agreed to participate in an experiment. They knew on some level that they could leave, and yet the situation had constructed a reality so total that leaving felt impossible. The role had eaten the person. This is not unique to a Stanford basement. This is what roles do, what institutions do, what systems do. They construct a reality, and then they construct a you that fits inside it. And that you starts to feel like the real you, starts to feel like the only you, until someone from outside looks in and says, "This has to stop." Most of the time, nobody looks in. Most of the time, the experiment just keeps running. You are in roles right now, multiple ones, each one with its own logic, its own authority structure, its own norms about what is acceptable, what is necessary, what is simply how things are done here. And each one is constructing a version of you that fits its requirements, that is useful to its purposes, that has internalized its values as if they were your own. How much of what you believe is right is something you actually examined? And how much of it is the sediment of every institution you have moved through, every authority you have deferred to, every cover story you accepted without asking what it was covering? Zimbardo is asking you to do something that the situation is always working against. He is asking you to step outside the role long enough to see it, to look at the reality being constructed around you and ask whether you are building it, or whether it is building you. This is harder than it sounds, because the role does not feel like a role from the inside. It feels like reality. It feels like common sense. It feels like just how things are. The guard at Stanford was not thinking, I am playing a role that is making me cruel. He was thinking, these prisoners need to be controlled. He was inside the logic. The logic had become his logic. The situation had become his perspective. The only exit from that is the thing the situation is most effectively designed to eliminate. The capacity to see yourself from outside, to watch your own behavior with the same clarity you would apply to a stranger. To ask, if I saw someone else doing what I am doing right now, what would I think of them? Most people cannot do this, not because they are stupid or weak, because the situation is very good at filling the entire field of vision, at making its logic feel like the only logic, at making the person inside it feel like they are just responding to circumstances rather than being produced by them. Zimbardo did not design the Stanford Prison Experiment to prove that people are bad. He designed it to prove that situations are powerful, more powerful than personality, more powerful than values, more powerful than everything you use to define yourself when the situation is not pressing on you. And the implication is not that you are helpless. It is the opposite. If situations are that powerful, then the situations you construct matter more than you thought. The institutions you participate in matter. The authority you normalize matters. The language you allow to frame other people matters. The small daily decisions about whether to hand your moral agency over or keep it matter more than any single dramatic moment of moral testing. Because the dramatic moment does not arrive announced. It arrives as the next small step in a series of small steps that have already been taken. It arrives feeling like the obvious thing to do given everything that came before. It arrives as the logical conclusion of a situation you allowed to be constructed around you without watching. The people who walked out of the Milgram experiment didn't do it because they had been saving up their moral courage for the big moment. They did it because they hadn't already spent it, because they hadn't already handed over the previous 10 decisions to the authority in the lab coat, because there was still something left to draw on. This is what Zimbardo means when he talks about heroism, not the dramatic gesture, the accumulation, the daily, unspectacular practice of keeping your conscience in your own hands, of noticing when the situation is asking you to look away and choosing to keep looking, of noticing when the language is doing something and asking what, of noticing when the authority is asking you to stop thinking and choosing to keep thinking. None of this makes you safe. Zimbardo is not offering safety, he is offering awareness. And awareness in a situation designed to produce unconscious compliance is the only meaningful form of resistance available. You are going to be in situations that test this. You already are. You will be in institutions that want you to hand over your judgment. You will be in groups that want you to stop seeing certain people clearly. You will be offered language that makes wrong things sound necessary. You will be given authority figures who want your deference more than they want your conscience. And in each of those moments, you will have a choice that feels smaller than it is. To keep seeing, or to look away. To keep thinking, or to let the situation think for you. To keep the person in front of you real, or to let the role, the category, the cover story replace them with something more manageable. Every atrocity in human history was built from millions of these small choices, made by ordinary people. People who were not monsters. People who were inside a situation that had been constructed carefully enough that the monstrous felt normal, felt necessary, felt like just doing what had to be done. You are not different from those people by nature. The only difference available to you is the difference you make by watching. Zimbardo called his book The Lucifer Effect because of the oldest story about how a good thing becomes a bad one, not through a single catastrophic fall, through the series of small corruptions, each one making the next one easier, each one narrowing the distance between who you were and who you were becoming until the distance disappears and you cannot remember where you started. That story is not mythology. It is a psychological process that has been documented, replicated, and mapped in enough detail that you now have no excuse for claiming you did not know how it worked. You are not a good person. You are a person who has not yet been placed in the right situation. The question is not whether that situation will come. The question is whether you will be watching when it does, or whether you will find out afterward, the way most people find out, when it is already too late to recognize yourself and what you have become. Pay attention, not to the dramatic moments, to the small ones. They are the only ones that matter. Here is what Zimbardo found when he looked at the people who did resist. They were not extraordinary. They did not have some rare psychological quality that others lacked. They were not braver or stronger or more virtuous. What they had was something quieter and more specific than any of those things. They had a clear sense of what they were not willing to do. Not a general commitment to being good, not a vague value system that said cruelty was wrong. A specific line, a specific thing they had already decided before the situation arose that they would not cross. And when the situation asked them to cross it, that prior decision was already there, already made. The situation could not make it for them because they had already made it themselves. This is what Zimbardo means by the importance of moral preparation. Not moral strength in the abstract, the specific, deliberate prior act of deciding what you are and what you are not before the pressure arrives, before the authorities in the room, before the group is moving in a direction and you have to decide in real time whether to move with it. Because in real time, under pressure, with authority looming and the group already moving and the cover story already in place, your ability to reason clearly is compromised. The situation has captured too much of your attention. The decision that should have been made in advance has to be made now in the worst possible conditions for making it. Most people have not made it in advance. Most people move through their lives trusting that they will know what to do when the moment comes, that their goodness will be available to them when they need it, that the clarity they feel right now reading this in the absence of pressure will somehow survive the arrival of the pressure intact. It will not. Zimbardo is asking you to do the work before the situation arrives, to decide now specifically and clearly what you will not do regardless of who is asking or what frame they put around it, to build the habit of questioning authority before you are standing in front of an authority that needs to be questioned, to practice seeing the humanity in people before you are in a situation that is working to make them invisible. Because habits built under pressure are not habits, they are performances. They last as long as the effort required to sustain them, which under real situational pressure is not long. Habits built before the pressure, practiced in the small moments, the daily unremarkable moments when nothing is at stake, those habits are structural. They are the difference between the person who folds in 6 days and the person who doesn't. This is not comforting. It requires something that comfort actively works against. It requires you to take the research seriously enough to change your behavior now, today, in ordinary circumstances based on what it says about extraordinary circumstances that may never arrive. It requires you to treat your own moral agency as something that needs maintenance, that can atrophy, that needs to be exercised in small ways to be available for large ones. Most people will read Zimbardo's work and find it disturbing and interesting and not change anything, because the situations feel distant, because the experiments feel like something that happened to other people in other decades, because the comfortable assumption that it could never apply to them is more powerful than the evidence that it already does. If you are one of those people, Zimbardo has something to say to you. He has already studied you. You are already in the data. And the data says that your certainty is not protection. It is the mechanism of your vulnerability. The most dangerous person in the Milgram experiment was not the one who was nervous and uncertain. It was the one who was confident, who felt sure of themselves, who believed their character was strong enough to handle whatever the situation asked of it. That confidence was what made them stop watching, stop questioning, stop maintaining the habits that resistance requires. They handed their agency over because they were certain they hadn't. You are not a good person. You are a person who has not yet been placed in the right situation. And the right situation is not a prison in Stanford or a lab at Yale or a military base in Iraq. It is the ordinary pressure of your ordinary life. The authority you defer to without thinking. The language you use when you're afraid. The people you have slowly stopped seeing clearly because seeing them clearly costs something and the situation makes the cost easy to avoid. It is already here. It has always been here. The only question is whether you are watching it or whether you are inside it, convinced, as everyone inside it always is, that you are the exception.